1. And we are live. I guess we're live. We're live in the woods. No, just kidding. So thank you very much for tuning in. It's July 22nd. I have to look at the dates. I always keep forgetting the dates for some weird reason. So July 22nd, 2026. Hello. I'm talking to my online people. So yeah. So basically, I'm in high river. I always confuse between high river and high level, which is not different. You ready to go? Are you ready to go? Yeah. Yeah. I'm just talking to my people online. Of course. So basically, I'm on the south side of the province here for 3 days straight. That'll be good. So I just want to see where you guys are watching. Whatever you're, Sandy, whatever you're ready.
I'm just going to give them a 2-minute, unless you want to just say that.
I want to say a 2-minute warning. Okay, though. Let me see. I want to do it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys are doing fantastic today. This is the 2-minute warning. So please get yourself seated. We're going to start soon. So if you want to go to the washroom, go outside, take a smoke, get something to eat, drink, whatever, it is the time to do it. Thanks a bunch. That's funny because all the people are in the back. Like all of them are in the back. So I just want to see where you guys are watching from. I saw some people from Ponoka, Provost. Oh, they're going to start soon. You're good.
Good evening. Good evening, High River. What a delight to see such a great crowd tonight. You don't know how much of an encouragement that is to us and to the speakers who come. So right away, I'm going to get rid of a few housekeeping issues here. The bathrooms are located out the main doors and turn right. We also have some emergency procedures that the Highwood Center would like us to announce, and that's in the event of a fire alarm. If you hear that, the building will be evacuated. Please proceed to the nearest exit. There are 2 exits located at the back of this hall, the main front doors or the west service doors at the front and back of the hall. If you can, please take your valuables and your coats or jackets, but do not congregate outside the front entrance doors. If you haven't been to the merchandise tables yet, please take a look later on, maybe during the short break that we have between the presentations and the Q&A. There's a sign-up table at the back as soon as you come in the main doors, and we're just asking that you put your name, the town that you're from, and either leave us an email, a phone number, or both. And that way, if we're back in your area, we'll be able to send you a poster, let you know that we're back. There are also trifold brochures at the back. Take one for yourself and take some extra ones to hand out to neighbors, friends, family. But we'll be good neighbors. Some people have no soliciting, no trespassing, so avoid those. We also have lawn signs at the back. There are different lawn signs. Cory has some there. I think there's some from Jason Leving, and then there are Let's Talk Alberta lawn signs as well. So we'd like to welcome you here tonight to an informational event sponsored by Let's Talk Alberta. Let's Talk Alberta is not a third-party advertiser. It is an educational society, so it works a little bit differently. The goal of Let's Talk is to do just what the name says, Let's Talk. These events offer an opportunity for people like you and me to come together, no matter what side we are on the issues, and to have a safe place to come together, to share our opinions, our comments, our questions, and to have a discussion, but in a respectful manner. We hope that each side will be willing to listen to the other when the questions come up, and we'll find that we agree on more than we disagree. We're not only interested in speaking to you, but we're interested in having you speak to us. So we will give you that opportunity later on. And after the short break, we'll have a microphone, and you can come up, ask your questions. If any of you feel uncomfortable doing that, but you have a burning question, come and see me, and I can ask that question for you. As a society, we are fully dependent on you for the ability to continue to sponsor these events, to print the informational materials that we have, to do advertising, to do anything and everything that we can to promote, educate, and bring the facts so that in October, when you go to the polls, you'll have the ability to make an informed decision and vote according to what you've learned. We are not funded by the government. We're not funded by large corporations, unions, or wealthy donors. The lion's share of what we get is from people like you and me, and people who want to share in working towards a free and prosperous Alberta. Your donation goes to help us to continue holding events like this one tonight, helps us pay for the venue, helps us give gas money to the speakers. No one from Let's Talk is paid, no speaker is paid, it's just gas money. But I can guarantee you that even if we weren't able to give them gas money, every speaker here would come just because they have a passion to see Alberta become free, to become prosperous, and money is not what buys their attendance here tonight. So please be assured when we pass the bucket later on that every donation is appreciated, and we try to do our very best with what we have. Having said all that, tonight's event will feature 3 speakers. After the presentation, we'll have a short 10, 15-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll do a question and answer period. Just before we go any further, can I just ask how many of you are here at an event like this for the very first time? Wow. Well, welcome. I hope, but I know that you'll leave here with a lot of valuable information and a lot to think about. We typically open in prayer because what undergirds us is faith, family, and freedom. So I'm going to ask Ben Crane, if he wouldn't mind coming out and just opening the meeting in prayer.
Sure, let's do that. Thank you, Father, so much for this land. Thank you for the life you've given to us, the freedom, the drive to thrive and to do good with what you have given to us. Thank you for these group of people out here tonight. Man, it's so good to see them, and I pray that you'll bless them for coming out. And Lord, I ask that your truth will be revealed tonight as we talk about things. We thank you so much for your love for us, for this good land, for these good people. And we give you this night tonight, and we ask you to do your thing that you do so well. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Well, I get to introduce to you the first speaker tonight. And what can I say about Ben?
Let me tell you.
Well, I was just going to mention that.
Don't say that. Yeah.
I was just going to tell you that Ben is very, very proud of his humility.
I am. Yeah.
And so it's very hard to puff him up, but I have to tell you what makes Ben Crane. And he's a musician, a singer-songwriter, a cartoonist, a writer, very talented creator of greeting cards. In fact, Charmin is at the back at their table, and if you want to see a little bit of Ben's artwork, there's decks of playing cards at the back for sale, and that it will promote and show how good you are at what you do. Poor people. But again, above all of those talents, I think what draws me to Ben is just who he is, and we know him as a good friend and a decent man. So we welcome Ben Crane.
Oh, thank you so much. Man, it's good to see a full house. You guys should see what you look like. In fact, everybody should turn around at the same... No, that wouldn't work. You'd see what you look like. The monitor could go down just a hair, please. We really appreciate you guys coming out and listening. I'm not a speaker. That's not really my biggest gift. I write songs and I sing, and usually what I want to say comes across a whole lot better that way. So when Shane had asked me to join this group, what we call a tatterdemalion assemblage of us who travel around, he says, you know, you ought to just write some songs and sing them. So I did. And the neatest thing that I found is hanging with these guys. We've got speakers that are constitutional lawyers. In fact, from what I understand, the two top constitutional lawyers in the country are traveling with us. We kind of like that. We got political scientists. We got all kinds of guys, economists, and a songwriter. And so I'm going to do my darndest to tell you what is on my mind. I really appreciate the chance to do this. And we're gonna start with the first song that I wrote when Shane says you could do this. And I went home and I listened to my heart, what was going on inside there. And the thing that was really hitting me was the reason I'm looking to keep things the way they have been is not just because they work, but also because they are just deep inside me as roots, these values that we hold deep and true that Ottawa no longer holds. And so I kind of put some of these things in on this song. This first one's called My Alberta Roots Run Deep. We got to give a shout out to Max down here. Max is an amazing man. He's been running with us for the longest time. We'll just get that restarted. He's been running with us right from the start, and he runs sound, and he does a podcast with all of this stuff, and he's got 8 zillion people watching. So shout out to Max. Thank you, man, so much for what you're doing. Let's try her again. The only life I know goes back 100 years, steeped in deep tradition of blood and sweat and tears. The value of hard work, common sense and hope and truth, family and freedom, and the value of our youth. What makes me want to hold on to what I know is right, and in the face of opposition, stand my ground and fight. My Alberta roots run deep. It's in my blood, in my bones, it gets stronger every day. When somebody tries to move in, take it all away, I just draw a line there in the sand, stand my ground and say, my Alberta roots run deep. Living on the land, watching life come and go, playing hard and working hard, sunshine and in snow. We don't really ask for much, 'cause we know that God provides and has given us all the tools we need to enjoy this life and thrive. So it makes us want to hold on to what we know is right, and in the face of opposition, stand our ground and fight. Our Alberta roots run deep. It's in our blood, in our bones, it gets stronger every day. When somebody tries to move in and tear it all away, we just draw a line there in the sand, stand our ground and say, our Alberta roots, you can't hide it, they define us. They made us who we are today, and when life's this good, you just don't throw it away. Our Alberta roots run deep. You can't dig 'em up, can't throw 'em out. They go deeper every day. And when somebody tries to move in and tear it all away, I just draw a line there in the sand, stand the ground and say, our Alberta roots run deep, run deep. I appreciate that so much. It's neat to be able to put into music what's inside. And I love music for that very reason. You can say stuff and wrap some pretty music around it. And one of the coolest things that I've learned running with these guys is history about this province that I never knew. I didn't know that we was conscripted We didn't even ask in 1905 to join. We didn't ask. We were not asked how we wanted to be governed. We were told. And it's kind of been the same way all throughout the 120 years, or some years that we've been together as a province. So I had to write a song about that. And this one is called Big Dreams. Little bit of tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of a fun one. This is an ode to the history of this beautiful province. Big sky and big dreams. The dance floor is open, ladies and gentlemen. No, we didn't ask to be brought here back in 1905. We was just fine, spending our time to mind our own business and thrive. But the East had different ideas. We was too good a deal to pass up, that's right. They saw what we had, and they wanted it bad, so they signed us up there on the spot. Said, we'll call you Alberta, land of big sky and big dreams. You do the work, we'll take the pay. That makes us the ultimate team. Well, we realized that we was a peasant. This arrangement, man, it just couldn't go far. They said, you feed the cow. We may allow you to take a small sip from the jar. Things just kept getting worse as the time flew. The feds kept us stomping our necks. Take all our pay, keep our assets at bay. The whole thing's become a big wreck. Bye to old Alberta, land of big sky and big dreams. 266, election day stinks. They've taken out all of our means. We've had it, we're rattled, we're just gonna move on and take back what's ours from the start. Chart a new course, 'cause we ride a new horse. Thank God that we're finally free. Raise a glass to old Alberta, land of big sky and big dreams. Finally free to be who we should be and rid of the liberal scheme. So let's break the chains and breathe free again. Thank God that we're finally free. Oh yeah, well thanks for the audience participation. What a hoot. I tell you, it's good to have this kind of fun, ain't it? Can you think, you could be home and doing nothing but sitting in front of the tube. You would not be having this much fun. And I wouldn't be breathing this hard. Well, here's something. I got one more song that I want to do. And this was the latest one that I had written. Because it's something somebody said. Like Sandra said this just a little bit ago, the format for this evening is for folks to get up and spout what's on their heart. And then we want to sit down and listen to you and hear what's on your heart. So get those questions ready. This gentleman came up and at one of the, probably a month and a half ago, and he says, I don't know what I'm saying here. He said, I don't know the answers. I don't know. But he says, I do know one thing. He says, something's got to change. And I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about the stuff that's going on. I've watched what's going on in our society. normally when something wants to change in society, something that we don't accept now, and they want to get it to where it's acceptable, it usually goes on a really slow slope, and sometimes maybe 2 generations. But man alive, last few years, we've seen stuff just go straight off the cliff, straight down, and I don't understand it. And it's unbelievable. And actually, I want to call out all the leadership of this province, because the garbage that we've been seeing, as far as things like people pushing people into traffic, people throwing hot coffee on canvassers as they're driving by. I mean, you drive by and you flip them a bird that says, well, bless you too. But, you know, that's easy to but when they start attacking you physically, one guy had a cigarette burn, a cigarette, someone tried to put it out on his face because they didn't like what he was doing. You see Cory knows all about this. He'll probably talk about it. People stealing lawn signs, people defacing things. I had a friend the other day at a place that we were speaking at. He said that morning, he had quite a morning. He was at a little park, handing out lawn signs, just giving them away. That's all he was doing. And some guy who didn't like what he was doing came up to him and started hollering, and he threatened him. And he says, I'm going home to get a gun, and I can come back, and I'm going to take care of you. And that, you know, why in the world has nobody been doing anything? And I guess that's what I want to call out tonight is anywhere from the top down, the premier to the police. Why are you not stopping this? Nobody has come out and said, you know what, this is not acceptable. This is not who we are. And if that's what the other side wants, is it any reason? Is it any reason why we want to move away from that? Anyway, that's the tough stuff that I just wanted to get out of the way. But a friend of mine his daughter came home from a church, and she gave him a pamphlet and said, this is what they're asking us to do. And I haven't seen the pamphlet, so I'm not sure who it is. It doesn't matter. But the idea on this pamphlet was, when the referendum comes, if you choose to exit Canada, basically all hell is going to break loose. It's going to be bad. Everything's going to go downhill. It'll be disaster. It'll be, you know, it was all of that kind of stuff. And the thing that hit me, that really caught my attention, was if you choose to remain in Canada, and this is verbatim, they said, at least we can keep the status quo. And then I got a brain cell on this side and a brain cell on this side, and every once in a while the two of them synapse, and there's a spark, and smoke comes out, and I have a thought. And that happened. I must have shook my head, and they snapped. But when I got thinking, the idea of status quo, by nature, by definition, means something staying the same. Ottawa is not staying the same. It's taken us a hard left, and we know all about that. And so I thought, you know what? Honestly, if you want a status quo, if you want something that stays the same of what you've always loved about Canada, that is no longer there, join us. We'll take you back. We'll keep you back to where it was supposed to be in the first place. So that's my message. Something's got to change. Something's got to change. Something's got to change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true in politics. Let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. When the front wheel starts to wobble, pull your truck on over. You may not be the only nut that's loose. You can't just ignore it or pretend that it's all okay. That shaky wheel is gonna cook your goose. Something's gotta change. Something's gotta change. Well, something's right. See what we can do. If it's broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true in politics. So let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't claim to have the answers or the way to hold back history's racing clock. I know it's time to leave the couch. It's time to hit our knees to rebuild this country on a solid rock. Something's gotta change. Something's gotta change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true in politics. So let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. You've heard that real insanity is to try the same thing over again. No wonder why you get the same response. There's gotta be more options. There's gotta be a way to bring this crazy train wreck to a halt. Something's gotta change. Something's gotta change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true in politics. So let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. So let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. Hey! Well, thank you so much. Well, it's time to get me off the stage and get some of these guys who really know what they're talking about. It's a privilege to get to know these guys. And the next feller that's coming up really honestly needs no introduction. He's got signs up all over the place. He lit Tabor on fire just a little bit. And he's been one of the founding starters of the Western Standard, one of the best independent media outfits. He's become a friend. Would you welcome, please, Cory Morgan.
Thanks, Ben. Nothing like bringing me in with a little bit of flattery.
There you go.
Gets me off to the right start. And pardon me.
We're doing technical issues here.
Well, I got nothing to hide behind, Max. I like having a podium. I can scratch things and stuff. Oh, I'll get by. Thanks. It's an honor to come down. I love it. I mean, to be able to talk in the county of Foothills. This is my turf. I live up in Pritis, and driving down, I've had an incredible volunteer crew, as Ben mentioned. You know, there's signs up all over the place. They're not my signs. They're signs for the third-party organization I started, but we're really turning Alberta blue. And I'll explain why that's a bit important in a moment. I I do work, for the Western Standard. I also write for, I've been doing some writing for Rebel now these days as well, and for Epic Times. So I'm a freelancer. I cover a lot of ground. And this will be the only time I'm going to pull the phone out here, but I want to make sure I phrase this right, because I want to explain, patting ourselves a little on the back, or at least the importance of independent media. So this is from a story today. I was in the newsroom today at the Standard. Some of you probably already saw what's going on. A really odd story with the Gordie Howe Bridge over in Detroit area. A deal. It's been going on a long time. It's a long story. There's no sense going fully down the rabbit hole. But the bottom line is, the Prime Minister said some things about 5 or 6 days ago about what was in the deal for the bridge, and dodged and tried not to let the deal get released. Well, the deal got released, and it's not what the Prime Minister said was in it. Now, I know, out of a Liberal, who'd have thought? But this is from CTV, and just a couple of the words and the type of language they used in their article. They referred to it as conflicting messaging, and said that it contrasts previous comments made by Prime Minister Mark Carney. That's a lot of words to say. He's a freaking liar. Just say it. Contrasts previous comments. If I had tried to tell my mother that when I was a kid, I would have had my ass tanned so hard. You learn about lying. But this is the legacy media, the big outlets, blatantly carrying water for the Liberal Party. This wasn't an opinion piece I'm quoting from. This was a news item. And that's how the bias sneaks in. I mean, if something's labeled as opinion, by all means. But it's when they sneak it into the news copy, then people really get misinformed. So some people reading that have this watered-down, polished version of his lie. But we've got to counter that. We're working on it. And we've got great outlets coming up. As I said, Rebel, Western Standard, a lot of other independent media. But we have a huge segment of the population that still follows legacy media. They're not going to move from it, at least until it goes away. And it's going away. Global's gone. CBC one day I hope will be, but I mean they've got another couple $100 million this year. They're up to $1.6 billion of your tax dollars going in for them to feed you that. And they haven't made anything decent since the Beachcombers. And it was good, I did like that show. But I'm doing my part, how I can, writing my pieces, doing my things, and I make no bones about it. I'm an opinion writer. I'm not always correct. My wife will remind me that on a regular basis. But I put out my view, my interpretation, my analysis of the news and such. And then Dave Naylor at the Western Standard, our news editor, was with the Calgary Sun for 30 years. He's very particular in making sure the news copy follows journalistic standards. I've been in there and watched him chew out reporters when they insert opinion into a news article. Those principles are still there. They still exist, but they're getting fewer and fewer as media gets more and more dependent on the government to pay its bills. And it's dangerous. But we'll do everything we can to counter that. Now we're coming to this big turning point in Alberta. This is a year like no other. We've never seen anything like this. We've never had this much discussion on Alberta's place in the Federation in history, really. I mean, it's been a solid year of it. There's going to be months more of it and probably years more of this discussion. Now, the discussion's got to lead to some outcomes, and we got to work on that. But it's a real opportunity. But everybody's fighting and working then to bend the ears of others and change their views. We've got a referendum question coming in this fall, and we need to talk about things because it's a big decision to a lot of people. And that's why I love that Chris Scott has put this together, put these meetings together so we can talk, so we can hash it out. Because, yes, that's going to be a non-binding question on October 19th. And yes, it's kind of a word salad, not an up-down. But it's still a very, very important question. It's turned into the de facto question on whether Albertans want to stay or go. And we have to make a strong, if not winning, showing for Alberta on that question. But we've got a giant mushy middle that we have to win. We've got a lot of people that we have to turn over. I'll do what I can on the media front. But the hardest part, and we've seen that already, is the emotional front. You know, some folks came to talk in the back already about that. When they talk to neighbors, they talk to others. There's really not a good, hard, rational case to make for the Federation. There isn't. The dollars and cents case is horrific. It's just bad. We pay so much more out than we get in return through services and transfers. The economic case is terrible. The freedoms, come on, COVID wasn't that long ago. We haven't forgotten. And we do know that we're just 3 more sneezes away from being locked down again for another 3 years. Nothing has changed. But people feel that attachment. They still will say, you know, I just love the concept of Canada and I can't let go. And as frustrating as that might feel when somebody says that and you want to grab them, well, can't you just understand? Well, don't do that. It won't work. Because that emotion is still going to move their finger on the ballot when they make their vote, whether it's rational or not. So we have to figure out how to approach it. And when it comes to an emotional question, a journalist like me isn't going to change somebody's mind. A politician isn't going to change somebody's mind. A piece of literature in their mailbox. All of these things are important, but they aren't going to change that emotional case. What's going to do that is one-on-one discussions with people they know. I mean, who can move you off of a case you feel emotionally invested in more effectively than somebody you know and trust? Whether it's a coworker, a family member, somebody you see at the gym all the time. I've never been to one, but I've heard that they talk there. All those opportunities where we speak to each other, the person you sit next to in the bar, that's where we have those personal conversations and we can change some of that emotional grasp. And it takes multiple conversations. It takes sensitivity. It takes something I'm really not good at. You got to listen to them. Because people do have concerns and they want to be respected. And that's where we got to watch to not let our frustration overcome ourselves with them. It doesn't matter if we think their view is good or smart or valid or not. It's their view and they're attached to it. And if you disrespect that view, you will not change them from it. So we need to train ourselves. We are the campaigners. We're the Albertans who are going to move that needle, and we have to consciously do it. We actually have to look for those opportunities to speak to people and shift them over. And we've also got to look at things strategically. I talk about a lot of things just saying, sort of like the Hippocratic Oath. First thing, do no harm. Is what I'm doing going to make things better? Or is it just personally satisfying? Like for some instance, there's the people, I've heard people use the red light, green light, yellow light analogy. You know, the red light are the people that are just never going to support it. Never going to do it in a million years. It doesn't matter what happens. They can be locked down for years. They can be taxed at 99%. They're still going to stay. There's the green light. Most of them are probably in this room. I suspect there's some yellow in here too. But the greens are people like me. I'm dedicated to independence, whatever it's going to take, as long as it's going to take, damn it, I'm going to get there one way or another, and I'm not giving up. But it's the yellow we got to win. And they can go either way. And we've got to identify those and talk to them. Talking to the green people, again, it's good, it's networking, it keeps us inspired, it keeps us engaged. It could be a good time, we could do some dancing. The red ones, when you identify them, don't waste energy on them. It's one of the mistakes we do most often. We start arguing, we start debating. Look, they will always let you know when they're red light. They'll let you know clearly enough when they've dug their heels in. They're a federalist for life. They're like vegans. Don't worry, give them 30 seconds, you'll know whether you want to or not. And they could be friends. They could be people that you like on every other level. That's another aspect of this. As I said, this is personal, this is emotional. Don't start a fight with a friend when you know you're never going to change it. You could lose a friend or a relationship with a family member. That's important too. COVID split so many people, so many families. That was one of the most unforgivable parts about the whole thing. There were many unforgivable parts. But seeing relationships ruined over politics. So another thing, don't do that. Identify those red people and avoid the conversation with them. If you see them set up, don't be like them. If you see them set up with Thomas Lukaszik's weird little purring mobile and they're handing out signs, just stay on the other side of the street. Going over and scrapping with them is only going to inspire them further. Might lead to other problems. Because that's what those guys do to us. That's what happens with us. Some people might have seen one of my past videos. A couple of people here I know who were there when that happened. We were doing a sign handout in Black Diamond. It was going magnificently. We put out a couple hundred signs that day. People driving by, we had, 20, 30 of us on the sidewalks, and this nutcase in a Jeep kept pulling by and screaming at us and calling us traitors and racists and all the usual lines and all that. And eventually he stopped and just kept idling there and going on and going on. And I just kept doing what we usually do, and the person next to me just keeps smiling and waving. And you see him getting madder and madder because he's not getting at us. But then he said something, and I won't go into the details of it, but it made me lose my composure. And I ran towards his vehicle. I called him something that relates to a man filleting another man. And he gunned it and took off, which was good for all of us. And as I said, in retrospect, I was very much in the wrong. I let him get to me. I let him put us into a circumstance that could have gone really, really badly. As I said, I've never been to a gym. I go running at him, he might have got out and beat the hell out of me. Or maybe I would have beat the hell out of him. Or maybe the two of us would have been two middle-aged idiots beating each other on the street. And you know somebody's going to have a camera and filming that. And that's going to go viral. Look at that. Cory Morgan, independent supporter on street brawl in Black Diamond. Getting back to that do no harm. That would do harm. They want to make us look crazy, and if I give them ammunition to do so, they're going to run with it. What I should have done was gotten video of him, because he was the one acting crazy. If I'd have gotten that, we could have done that to them. But I didn't use the foresight. I let him get under my skin. I lost an opportunity and could have actually made things a lot worse. So I'm just saying, for all of us, we're not all necessarily trained campaigners, trained debaters, but we're all eager. I mean, the amount of engagement I've seen this last few years in Alberta has been like nothing else I've seen before. I've been involved in politics since I was a young, long-haired guy with Preston Manning in the Reform Party, and all the way through, but never anything like this last 4 years. COVID was a horrible period, but it woke the world up, and it engaged people, and it made people realize they've got to get off their butts because no one else is going to do it for them. That's always been the Alberta attitude, so it made it much easier for Albertans to get up and do so. That's why you guys are in here on a beautiful summer night, rather than watching TV where I'd be on there and just calling people things anyway. So you can get it in person. But we get things done. I've never seen annual general meetings with 3,000, 6,000 people showing up for them, spending hundreds of dollars to come out to them like we saw in Red Deer the other year. I mean, the Progressive Conservative Party had a majority government for 40-some years, and a big annual general meeting for them back then would be 1,000 people. But that's because people are realizing you have to be engaged, you have to get up and you have to do things. I saw the petitioning phase, people freezing out on street corners, highways, going out, getting yelled at by people, getting cigarette butts burned on them. But they didn't give up, and they got hundreds of thousands of signatures from Albertans on a contentious issue. And now we're on to this step of, yes, this referendum, to hold another referendum, but it is a step in the right direction, and we can't let it go. We can't let frustration or petulance stop us. Another thing that we're bad for some of our own supporters is, what's the point? What's the point? They just rigged the system. They'll just fix it. We'll never get out. That's a red light person. It might even be a person who says they support independence, but that's a red light person. They're just going to bring you down. They're just going to come down on your efforts. So watch for that one too. I know it's not the path we wanted. It's not the ideal one, but whoever told you it was going to be easy? Who thought it was going to be straightforward? Who for a second thought that the establishment wasn't going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at us to keep us from getting where we need to go? So we shouldn't be shocked that they're going to be using the courts. We shouldn't be shocked that the government in power is now going to campaign against us in this referendum. But we can't let that stop us. We just have to keep pushing forward, keeping the pressure on, and keep winning these things. We're on track for it in a way like I've never seen before. But we've got to maintain composure, got to maintain focus. The signs don't win elections. They don't change minds. But what they do the same thing with what Chris is doing all over the province with this, is they open conversations. When you have the sign on your lawn, you're signaling to your neighbors where you stand on some things, and that you're happy to talk about it. And maybe you'll find out 3 doors down there's another neighbor who feels the same way. And if you keep spreading that, those conversations will keep spreading. The sign didn't change the mind, but it started the conversation that led somebody to where we need to go. That is what they're about. In the cities, on average, our signs, 1 in 5 of them are getting stolen within a week. That's how pathetic the opposition is. But it also lets them know that we're scaring them witless. They're scared of us even expressing ourselves and showing ourselves out there. The most frustrating call and contact I get from somebody is saying, I had 2 signs stolen, now I'm just not going to put another one up. We can't let them do that. If they steal 1, put up 2. Wire it to the tree. Staple it to the neighbor's dog, something. But don't let them get away with suppressing your view, or they have won. If we can't get to the point where we can just put a sign on our lawn and feel comfortable, we've already lost. It is an act of courage to put it out there because they're trying to ostracize supporters. This is polling at well over 1/3 of the province already, and they're ostracizing people. That's insane. This is not a minority, tiny movement. Might not be the majority yet, we don't know. But it's strong enough that we should be openly able to speak about it and express it and show it. But we're going to have to push, and we're going to have to fight to be able to keep doing that because they're going to push back. They're already pushing back. And it's going to get uglier the closer we get to then. And this is where these rooms are important. This is where we network. This is where we socialize, but we also share each other's strengths. We share each other's strategy and experiences so that we know we're not alone. We're moving forward. We're Albertans. We're going to win this thing. So I'm going to leave it at that, and we'll get on to the question and answer period, which I really look forward to because that's the part where actually I shut up and listen for a little while and I learn some things, as well as spout out some more answers on what I think is right and wrong anyways when you ask those questions. I'm looking forward to it. Keep those questions going. Somebody will always hit us with one we never thought of. And that's part of this when you're having those conversations with people. The more answers we can honestly give and good, accurate answers, the better the chance you're going to move them over when you're having those conversations. So I'm going to hand this off to Mr. Chris Scott. Again, somebody who probably doesn't need introduction, but you know him from the Whistle Stop Cafe. He held the incredible Albertans Day celebration there on July 1st. He's been a patriot and an advocate for Albertans for years, and of course he's put all this together, for which I am very, very grateful for these discussions, these events, and these groups. And he's going to talk further with you about, I don't know what Chris wants to talk about tonight, but he's always got lots to say. So thank you for your time, guys, and I'll see you at the Q&A.
Sometimes I think Cory and I may be related. I think he actually might be my much, much, much older brother. Too many muches, yeah. And the reason I say that is because we often say the same things and we're thinking the same things. Like he said, I don't know what Chris is going to talk about. And I'm standing back there thinking, I don't know what I'm going to talk about either. It's like we're connected somehow, which is really neat. And that is kind of true. When I speak at these events, or any event for that matter, I don't write speeches. I never write speeches. I wrote a speech once to deliver on the steps of the legislature on October 28th, was it, last year? And I got up there and I looked out at this sea of blue Alberta flags and free Alberta hoodies, much like the ones that lovely Jessica is selling back there that you can purchase before you leave. And I couldn't read my speech. And it wasn't because it wasn't great. I mean, that was the closest I've gotten to actually writing down or recording those earth-shattering, world-changing speeches that I come up with in my head driving down here. But I couldn't do it because as I looked across the crowd, I thought, you know what? People are tired of being talked to. They're tired of being told things. They're tired of scripts. We don't want that anymore. We need to start talking to each other and talking about what we really feel, what we really want, where we're really at, not what some script on a paper says. And in the last few months, I've really come to realize that many of the leaders, or those who wish to be leaders, including politicians, government, whatever, they're gaslighting us. They're telling us what we want to hear while ignoring what we need. They're, in some cases, talking to us like as if it's our fault that we're in a situation that requires us to stand up and speak out. And I am completely done with that. I am done listening to people tell me what is best for me when those people will never suffer the consequences that I will if I do things the way they want me to do it. And it kind of reminds me of when the government told me that I had to use my business as the sacrificial lamb to COVID. They said, you have to do this. And I said, well, if I do that, I'm going to be destroyed. Well, it's for your own good. I'm like, what? How is this making any sense? Don't worry. You can suffer the consequence. And they never had to. So anyway, here we are 6 years later from all that fun stuff during the COVID stuff. And I find myself at Shane might know, I think this is about our 78th or 79th meeting, something like that. A lot. We've done a lot of meetings. We've been from one end of Alberta to the other, from one side to the other. And the common theme across all of these meetings is that we have a very important question that's going to be put to the people of Alberta in October, correct? Now, not as important as we would have liked it to be, but it is a question on self-determination. And you're going to get the opportunity to answer that question. That means that we bear a little bit of responsibility to make sure that when we go into that ballot box and we're standing there looking at that piece of paper, we understand the question, we understand the consequence or the benefit of whatever answer we choose, and we can accept that. And I tell you right now, we're not going to get to a place where we can responsibly answer a question on Alberta self-determination if everybody keeps canceling each other. If municipal venues keep trying to cancel those who wish to speak to their fellow citizens. If we won't have the conversations or debate the ideas, how in the world are we going to get to the best outcome? If we continue to let the politicians, who up until this point have benefited greatly from this system, if we're going to let them continue to tell us, to tell you what it is that you should do or what you need to do, while expecting you folks to be the ones that bear the burden of the decision and not them, what a shame. What a shame that would be. What a shame if we're offered the opportunity to answer a question on self-determination and we fail in our civic duty to do those things. Understand the question, understand the consequences, and make the best decisions. Because this decision, as I look around the room, I see most of us are probably at least cresting the hill. Maybe some are on a toboggan on the other side, having the time of their lives. But it's really not, Ben put up his hand, of course. It's really not us that's going to see the major impacts of the decision resulting from October. It's going to be our kids and our grandkids, right? Because politics kind of moves at the speed of molasses. Policy doesn't change things overnight, and it takes a bit to see the results. So the decisions we make in October, and actually the decisions we make today and tomorrow and up till October and then on, they're going to affect the futures of our kids and our grandchildren. So that means that, in my opinion, as a parent, and hopefully someday a grandparent, I want to make sure that I know the facts and that I've talked to people before I make that decision in October. And you might say, oh, well, Chris, your mind's already made up. Look at the fancy blue shirt you're wearing. Yes, that is true. My opinion is that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. My opinion 2 years ago was that Alberta needed a referendum on independence to gain the leverage to fix things within Canada. My opinion before that was that the entire government needs to go. My opinion before that was that I'm just one guy and I can't make a difference. So you see how my mind has been changed as I've learned new things. And that means that if a whole bunch of people that believed that the status quo was best for me and best for my family and they came here and they sat in the front row and they advocated for that case and they presented facts and evidence to me that would support their opinions, they could bring me to their side. I'm willing to listen to them. I'm not a robot, although my ex-wife would say I'm a robot. But I'm not unchangeable. And I don't think they're unchangeable as well. We often refer to the people that don't share our opinions as the enemy or the opposition, correct? We do. I think that's a mistake. I actually believe that those who don't share my opinions, even, well, maybe not the ones that wish me death, maybe the ones that respectfully disagree with me, I look at those people and I see an ally. I just haven't done my job yet and brought them to our side. I haven't become the leader they need to see that encourages them to come with me where I want to go. They're not our enemies. They're not our opposition. They're our brothers and our sisters, and they just think different than us. And how do we change people's minds and hearts? What do? It's something that we haven't been doing very well in the last 20 years. Really, since our phones and conversations fit in the palm of our hand in the form of pixels rather than face-to-face interactions, it's talking. We're not doing it enough. And now we're to the point where instead of talking about things, I'll give you an example. I got a message on Let's Talk Alberta, and yes, you can go to letstalkalberta.com and you can use the contact us, and I will see those messages. And it was a lady in Red Deer who gave her address, and her email was, I'm not going to tell you what her email was, but it was something like sweet someone, like implying that it was a sweet person. The email started off with, "You bunch of morons." So I'm thinking, okay, maybe she used the wrong email. She should have used a different one. "You bunch of morons came on my property, even though you see that I have Forever Canadian signs and Canadian flags and all of these things, and you tried to hand me a pamphlet on separatism." Well, first of all, our pamphlets aren't on separatism. They're talking about some of the issues surrounding the conversation. And she said, "How dare you come here and try and talk to me?" And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I actually want to talk to the people that disagree with me. I want the people that disagree with me to come and talk to me. That's kind of the idea. That's what we're supposed to do in a democracy, am I right? That's how it's supposed to work. So I've got blue signs all over my yard, a whole bunch of Cory's signs, because when I saw what happened in Tabor, I thought, well, I'll put more. Then I put 30 at the whistle stop, then I put 30 more, and then someone came and stole them, and now I'm going to put bigger ones. Those signs are there so that when people drive by, they see, hey, the guy in that house, he supports Alberta independence. And either they're going to honk, which most of them do, and give me a thumbs up, or they're going to flip me the bird, or by some miracle, they will stop. They'll knock on my door and they'll say, "Hey, my name is whatever, and I notice you have signs on your yard supporting an independent Alberta. I don't support that. Can we talk about that?" It doesn't happen, does it? I believe it would be a miracle if those things did start happening. But that's the whole point. I wear blue because I want people to know what my opinion is. I want them to talk to me. I love it when people come up and say, "Hey, that's a great shirt. I can't wait to get out of Canada. We need to support this." And it's this great big, pat each other on the back thing. But I also I need the people that disagree with my blue shirt to come up to me and say, "Hey, you know what? I disagree with that. This is why." And if they don't do that, you know what I'm going to do? If they don't change my mind and bring me to their side of this conversation, do you know what I'll do? I'm going to travel all over Alberta. I'm going to have conversations with people just like you and just like them. I'm going to change thousands and tens of thousands of minds just by having conversations. I will listen to them. I will do my best to understand what it is they want, and I will tell them and I will show them how an independent Alberta could give them what they want. I will provide the facts and I will provide the evidence, and I will spend 12 hours a day sitting in our little musty office in Mirror, Alberta, our Let's Talk Alberta office, and I will print tens of thousands of those trifolds you see back there. I will produce booklets and I will distribute them to every person I see. I'll build a team of volunteers by the thousands, and we'll do that as well. Hopefully you folks will do that. And I will change people's minds, and I will bring them on board with what my opinion is by talking to them. So if you're a person that believes that Alberta should stay, your opinion is valid. And I want you to try and change my mind. Why? Because for me, this is not about a flag. This is about understanding and acknowledging that the blessing that we are going to be afforded in October is unlike anything else we will ever experience in civics or in politics in our lifetimes. And I understand that I have a responsibility to learn and listen and grow and understand and make the best decision. I want to make the best decision. And if you think my opinion is not the best path for Alberta, change my mind. Don't let me get it wrong. Don't cancel the conversation before we have it and let me continue to go and change tens of thousands of minds. Bring me to your side. Be the leader. My friend Thomas uses the word unity all the time. He drives a unity bus. That implies that he wants people to be united. And do you know what I see? I see division. I have friends that try to attend events, literally campaigning and advocating for an opinion that I don't share. And at the door, they're turned away. Do you know why? Because they don't agree with the other people in the room. We don't do that here. We will never allow that here. Anybody is welcome to come here, but if you're respectful, I'll call you a dink, I'll publicly shame you, disrespectful, I'll call you a dink, I'll publicly shame you, and I'll kick you out. Because we don't mess around like that. But if you have a respectful conversation to be had, we want to have it. That's the message of Let's Talk Alberta, except for the dink part. That's my personal thing, not reflective of the organization as a whole. That's the point. I don't know of any other group that is as committed as we are to facilitating the conversation, to specifically hosting town halls, to learning and bringing information together in bite-sized packages that can be distributed to people. A group committed when we see something on social media or in legacy media for that matter, say we see somebody standing up on a podium and saying, you can't support Alberta independence because you will lose your old age security. You will lose your Canada pension. You'll lose your citizenship. They'll strip you of your citizenship. You won't be able to travel across the country. You have family in Ontario, you'll never see them again because you won't have mobility rights. I'll get on social media, I'll call out those lies, I'll produce pamphlets, and I'll send out 100,000 to people across Alberta. And then I'll encourage the people that receive that information to share it. Because while this is a very good turnout, obviously we need to reach way more people than what are in this room, right? That puts the responsibility and the burden directly on your shoulders. No matter what side of the conversation you're on, you have a responsibility. If you're going to go into that ballot in October and you're going to make a decision, you need to start talking to people. You need to bring this conversation where we can't reach. You need to bring it where the billboards don't reach, either side. And you need to have the conversations with the people that you know and trust who are already in your circle, who you already have a relationship with, because they are more receptive to information from you than from me. Because I'm just some slightly overweight but ruggedly handsome burger flipper from Mirror, Alberta. What do I know and what do they care what I say? But they care what you say. So it's on you. Now, the second part of what we do is we try and give you information. All the information you need to have the conversations that must be had so that collectively Albertans can have the best possible outcome. That's what this is about. Full stop. The best possible outcome for Albertans. It is not about a flag. It is not about patriotism. It is not about Mark Carney, even though it's fun to poke fun at him. It's not about the politicians that have failed us by gaslighting us for decades. This is about the opportunity for Albertans to do something that has never been done before, something in Canada, something that in other places, millions of lives have been lost pursuing the gift you're about to be given in October. That is very heavy. This isn't an election. This isn't about the next 4 years. It's not about, ooh, fear the NDP. This is about self-determination for a potential nation. And once you wrap your head around that concept and what that means and what other people have had to sacrifice to get that, I would wager that you will become as passionate about this conversation as I am. This means a lot to me. Out in the hallway, there's some pictures. Awesome pictures of young men and young women and cool airplanes, days gone by, and there's some text on the bottom that says 117,000 lives were lost in World War I, Canadian lives, World War I, World War II, Korea, and UN peacekeeping missions. 117,000 lives. That's a lot of lives. That's just slightly more than the amount of lives that's been ended by our government through MAID programs. Those numbers mean something. And those sacrifices people have made mean something to me. Not the flag, but their pursuit of doing what they know is right and pursuing freedom and prosperity. That's what we're doing as Albertans. And no, you are not whining. No, you're not throwing a temper tantrum. You're participating in the most amazing civic engagement movement that this country actually has ever seen. So well done for you. Now I've gone way over my time like I usually do. I'm getting more pumped up about this all the time. The more I speak about this, I'm almost more speaking to myself than I am to you. Like just really driving it home to myself how important this is, how critical this is, how much of a blessing it is. And therefore my speeches get longer and longer every time. Maybe I'll have to start writing them. But more important than what I have to say, we really want to hear what you have to say. We want to hear your questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 10-minute break, which always turns into 15 or 17 or 18, Shane. We're also going to pass around these little yellow buckets. They're very intimidating. And I would ask that you do one thing. Use peer pressure to convince the person next to you to put something in there. No, I'm just kidding. If you can support what we're doing, please put something in the bucket. It does cost a lot of money. I said last night in Camrose, I told Sandy and Patty to plug their ears. I'm not going to tell them to plug their ears tonight. In the last week, we've spent, with what Patty did today, we've spent about $8,000 just printing materials. Sitting in a room, printing materials, boxing them up to go out to get distributed. So we're actually, when you put money in a bucket like that, or you donate at letstalkalberta.com, or you send an e-transfer to letstalkalberta@gmail.com, we're not using that money to go out and do fun things for ourselves, although this is fun for me. We're using that money to bring this conversation to Albertans, and we can't do it without you. We'll do our best, and we've been kind of doing that since February. We got a sizable donation a couple weeks ago that let us really ramp up our efforts and do more, but it's a long road ahead of us, and we have a lot to do, so your support means absolutely everything. Anyway, after this is done, we're going to take that 10 or 18-minute break, and I would encourage you to visit some of the tables at the back. All of our merchandise at Jessica's table is overpriced, but that's how we can afford to do this. The rest of the stuff is reasonably priced, and there's two main reasons why we bring stuff like that here. Number one, we need to make a little money, just like you do. Thank you very much for sharing your hard-earned money with us. And it really starts conversations when you start wearing your opinion. My friend Berta Proud Dad says, wear your opinion, unapologetically. If you believe in Alberta self-determination, wear that. Use it to start conversations. And also, as you're out and about, you'll see other people wearing stuff that is similar to what you're wearing. Encourage them. Thank them for wearing their opinion, even though sometimes it's not easy. It's getting easier, though. The more blue we see out there, the more people that are bold with their opinions and stand up for what they believe in, the easier it becomes for the rest of us. So buy lots of blue things. There's also some Canadian flag stuff back there because I do love Canada as well. And you're free to buy that if you want, although Jessica never puts it out, I see. But yeah, so have a visit, mingle, and we'll meet you back here in roughly 10 to 17 minutes, and we'll do a Q&A. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, we're switching to intermission mode.
Okay, my name's Shane. I have two questions. The first question is, talking to my colleague at school, I'm a teacher, and my colleague was saying when if Alberta separates, it'll be disaster, it'll never work, and all that sort of stuff. And my wife and I have traveled. We've been to Czechoslovakia, and you had Czech Republic and Slovakia, and they're doing very well. So my first question is, do you have other examples of successful countries or that have undergone a referendum and there's been peace afterwards and prosperity? That's the first question.
I can certainly hit that first one quickly. Norway and Sweden were a union until 1905 when Alberta was formed. Norway held a referendum and voted to separate, and now those countries are both thriving. They're a couple of the most, they've got other challenges to speak of, but they're successful democracies, and they're certainly, they were close to war at the point when the referendum came. They had skirmishes and things, and now they have passportless borders, a very tight relationship, and they're doing better than ever. It's an analogy I've used before sometimes, like with my first ex-wife. We get along a lot better now than we did when we were married. Sometimes the relationship gets better. But there are working examples of countries who have done this and can do it peacefully.
Okay, my second question's fairly short. It said political instability when you leave, or not political, but economic instability. Because since Trudeau got in, I did a bit of research, and they said the Royal Bank of Canada said investments gone. They've lost Canada's lost $1 trillion in investments just because of the Liberal government and its anti-business policies. Now, do you have you talked to people in the States or investors outside of Canada to say what would happen in a referendum? Would you be more apt to invest in Alberta, which seems to be more business friendly than the rest of Canada in some of the provinces I've lived in? Or do you have any statistics that show that, yes, there may be political instability in the short term, but in the long term it's going to be more economically sustainable Alberta? Do you have any research on that?
Yeah, no, I reference that RBC study often. The Fraser Institute put out a similar one. That's one of the things to remind people when they talk about, the potential risks of leaving. Well, when we look at the costs already of staying, they're pretty substantial due to the investment climate in Canada. No, I haven't had conversations with Americans or investors to specifically find people who would do that, but I believe they're there. Something we have to remember is we're a resource economy. I had somebody debating me saying, in Montreal, the Bank of Montreal left Quebec over the referendum. Well, a financial institution can move. Our oil sands aren't going anywhere, and that's a product the world is going to want. We would also want to be honest with people. There will be some instability. When the time comes, we vote to become independent, that's a radical change. I mean, that will be a period of negotiations, a period of building a new constitution, a new system. Admittedly, there's going to be some investment chill. There's going to be currency challenges. We have to look at the long game. So I think we should be honest with people. In the short game, it could potentially be a little rough. It will be a little rough. But in the long game, much, much better.
Yeah, and it's a lot like, I always think of it a lot like, either an aircraft taken off from an aircraft carrier. He hits the end, and oftentimes he'll kind of and then get going. That's, and the other thing is like I don't know, how do you spell E? Oh, E, lots of E's. Okay, you stutter a lot. The other thing is we got to remember, we got to think like pioneers here. A lot of times we want to know all the answers before we make up our mind. There are no answers that we have a lot. The cool thing is we can actually answer them ourselves. When they roll things out and they ask, what is your opinion? What do you want to see? How do you want to be governed? That's when you get in there and you tell them. And it's like the pioneers. They left their country, wherever it was, and they headed west. They had no idea what they were going to face. They didn't have the answers, but they knew that where they were was no longer an option. They were leaving out, and let's not be afraid to get that. Thanks, Chris.
So, quickly on that first question about other nations, if you do a little digging, you'll find that there's something like 38 new nations have formed since 1990, and 80% of those new nations that happened peacefully. And the vast majority of those new nations are doing reasonably well. Some are doing better than others, but I can tell you it's nothing to do with their geographic position, or it's less to do with their geographic position and more to do with the policies that the people who are exercising their sovereignty are creating, right? The question about economic instability, this one, I almost have to laugh out loud when people say, oh, Alberta independence would cause so much instability, businesses will flee. I'm like, okay, I started working in the Alberta oil patch in 2000 or 2001. I actually can't remember. Back then, we had a company here called Encana. Does anybody remember Encana? Is Encana here anymore? Where did they go? Why? Economic instability, policy instability. It wasn't because of independence or sovereignty or even a question. It was because the policies that the federal government were putting forward were so bad, the business case became poor enough that they left. And Alberta has lost something like an estimated $150 billion of capital investment since Justin Trudeau took office. $150 billion. Do you know how many jobs that is? You know how much prosperity that would bring to Alberta? And it wasn't because of a conversation on self-determination. It was because a government that we could not effectively influence was creating policy and implementing it and putting it on us and never having to suffer the consequences. We did. And that's the difference. That's the opportunity. Nobody in this group or in our speakers will ever tell you that everything will be roses. We don't have a crystal ball. And we can't tell you that everything's going to be perfect. What we can tell you is that for the first time in Alberta history, it will be Albertans who are deciding whether they're going to have policy that's good for them or bad for them. That's the opportunity. And what do we do if we mess up and we create some policy, like, I don't know, let's say we're going to it'll never happen. This is way out of left field. Machines that suck carbon dioxide, plant food out of the air and put it in the ground. We would never do that. Let's pretend that we have this big taxpayer subsidized thing to do that, okay? And we find out, you know what, this actually isn't good. It's not doing any good. It was a blunder. We sacrificed some prosperity. We made a mistake. Now we're going to fix it. And we can do that because it's our choice. But if it's another government that we can't influence that's doing those types of things, and I just use it as an example in a different universe, that's not right. If there's decisions in policy that either reap the benefits or suffer the consequence, that's how it should be.
Hi, my name is James Clayton. As someone who suffers from a brain injury, travel and doing things is very difficult for me. So my mom is one of those nostalgic people, and I think her question would be based on everything that's happened to me. I've been called a moron many, many, many times. So I decided that my next project will be called Alberta Independence for Morons from a fellow moron.
Love it, and I will say for the record that I also have been called that on many an occasion, so we're in the same club together, and proud to be there with you.
So my question would be, what would you do personally to ensure that we don't end up with a government that's like Carney or worse?
That is an excellent question. What do we do to make sure that the government we have is the government we want? Before I answer the question, and I promise I'll answer it, I want to ask you folks, what do we do now? What do we do now to prevent Mark Carney's or Justin Trudeau or Pierre Elliott Trudeau, for that matter, from becoming the Prime Minister? Do we hold massive rallies with an apple-eating politician who's gained some instant charisma in the past 2 years, filling stadiums, massive tour buses, tour airplanes, and we all vote for what Alberta wants, what BC wants, what Saskatchewan wants collectively as the West, and then we change the government, right? No, sorry. I forgot that we close our ballot boxes at 8 o'clock and the election's called at 8:19. Our ballot boxes aren't even open. So right now, there's very little that Alberta can do, or Alberta and the Western provinces can do, to prevent the types of government that would, for instance, use Alberta as a sacrificial lamb in a trade deal. An independent Alberta would be much, much different. Imagine if your vote was critical, if your vote really counted. Imagine if when you voted, you knew that if you advocated for something and you became a leader and you went somewhere politically and you brought people with you, that you could change the world. Imagine. How wonderful would that be? That's what we do. We make sure that people understand that civics is a participation sport. Perhaps we have it in our education. I don't know. But we participate. And then we have elections that we can actually influence the outcome of. And in doing so, we make sure that the people we elect are accountable to us and us only. And that gives, I know that would give a better outcome for all of us.
I'll just hit quickly, similar to what you talk about. There's that saying you've probably heard, in a democracy you get the government that you deserve. Unfortunately, Canada's democracy doesn't function properly, so we get the government Toronto deserves. And that's the issue we're suffering with. But, as Chris said, let's presume we become independent. Let's presume we brought government home to our own jurisdiction and we can make our decisions for ourselves. We always have to keep in mind the responsibility is ours. We have to get up, as Chris said, we have to know it's our civic duty to make an informed vote and hold our politicians accountable and keep them there. One of the biggest mistakes they made with Brexit wasn't voting for Brexit. It was taking their hands off the wheel once they won it because they thought it was all finished. They could go home and leave it alone. And then the politicians screwed everything up. So it's not over when you get independent. It just means that we're now finally going to be in the driver's seat. But we can drive it off the road just as easily as we can do good for ourselves. So we've got to maintain that personal responsibility. The only guarantee we have in a democracy of not having another Carney government is our making sure we don't give ourselves another one.
Hi, my name is Sheila Corbett, and I just want to ask a couple of questions here. The first one is, when we do it and we separate, I was told that the oil fields in Alberta don't belong to Alberta, they belong to Canada. Is that true?
No.
Then the second one is, when we separate, will the government that's already in separate with us, or will the government we have now, the Premier, will she just come with us? What happens then? I don't get this bit.
Okay, I guess I'll just talk a bit about like the land thing, aside from where we'd have to negotiate, such as national parks, federal penitentiaries, some military bases. There'd be some small areas where we would have to negotiate and figure out how that's going to go as far as assets go. Crown land, Crown just means government, and that's provincial jurisdiction. It's ours. It's gone. And reserves, that's a whole different question and story. Fair enough. That's 1.3% of the province, though. But as for how the government would work, let's go down the whole of, we've got to the point of a Clarity Act compliant referendum. We held it. 60% of Albertans said we're ready to go. The day after, our premier will still be the same premier. The government will still be the same government. The federal government will be the same government. But we'll now be working towards a constitutional convention, the changes, the negotiations. It will get to a point where we will have to form and elect a new government. If the existing premier happened to win it, so be it. That would be where we're at that point. So it wouldn't immediately change, but it would give a mandate, I guess you could say, to start moving towards that.
Hi, I'm Marilyn, and I have a question about, I believe our pensions would be secured. The CPP local authority pension is a provincial pension. Nod your head.
Which pension?
LAPP.
I don't know what that is.
That's not federal, that's provincial, I believe. So they would be secure is what I'm asking.
Well, so pensions in general would likely be secure, and you would always have to check with your financial advisor for this. But I'll speak specifically about the Canada Pension Plan, because that's generally the one people want to talk about. So your Canada Pension Plan has a portability clause in it, It's not something the government is giving you for nothing. It is a compelled investment that you are forced by law to make because it's such a good investment that we would all invest in it if we weren't compelled by law to do it, right? Probably not. Anyway, it's yours. It's not an entitlement. It is an asset. When you move to France, wherever, if you move out of the country, you still get it. So that is something you get. And it really irks me when people who hold 4 or 5 different citizenships tell Albertans that they'll lose their Canada pension plan if Alberta becomes a different nation. Well, I'm sorry, but you're still a Canadian, just living in a different nation. As a matter of fact, I believe Thomas Lukaszuk may have conceded this argument with me in that once you're a Canadian, you're always a Canadian, because I see he's putting forever Canadian signs everywhere, that tells me that you are forever a Canadian. Even if Alberta becomes independent, you are still a Canadian. That's one of the other lies that we're told, is that you're going to be stripped of your citizenship. That can't happen. There's no way in Canadian law that can happen. So specifically the pension, Canada Pension Plan has portability clause. I'm unaware of the details with the other one, the LAPP. That's one that you would have to dig into the fine details, but I would bet dimes to donuts, as Ben says, that there would be a clause in there that says that's yours no matter where you live.
This is just a question from a member of the audience. If our referendum is successful and Alberta does become a sovereign nation, what happens to people who are receiving and depending on WCB?
Well, WCB is a provincially legislated program. Again, we are compelled to contribute to that as employers anyway. That's one of the things that would be transitioned, right? It would be moving from one jurisdiction to another. And that does require some planning, and there are some bright minds and good thinkers that are considering these things. One of them is my friend Keith Wilson. He heads up what's called a transition council, and he's got a bunch of people thinking about these things. So how do you go from Workers' Compensation Board provincially managed by Alberta to a Workers' Compensation Board managed by the new nation of Alberta? Well, it's a letterhead change. There's some jurisdictional staffing, whatever. But these things people are considering it, right? So it's not a hurdle as much as it is just something that has to be thought about and planned ahead. And on another note, same note, WCB, there's a lot of controversy around how WCB operates. As a matter of fact, not too long ago, there was a WCB claimant who lit themselves on fire in front of the office in Edmonton because they were so frustrated. They lost it because they had injuries. They needed help from the program that's supposed to help them, and they couldn't get it. They were denied, bureaucratic red tape BS, and eventually they did that. So it's not perfect. But it's one of those things where we have an opportunity to do something better.
Hi, my name is Rick. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you gentlemen for putting this on tonight and being here, and everyone here. My question to you is there anything that can or will be done to ensure that Alberta elections or some other force don't skew the numbers of the referendum outside of our favor? Thank you.
Okay, I know, and there's a lot of questions about elections Alberta, and they're leaning right now, and they're not doing themselves any favors. I'll certainly grant you that. Having worked on a number of provincial elections, though, our system is actually really, really good. It's on paper ballots. There's no electronic counting, and we have a scrutineer system, which is really critical. And I know a lot of people not involved in politics necessarily know about it, so I'll just kind of quickly go over it. But it's your right as a citizen to be in there on election day. You could go first thing in the morning when they unfold and open and seal the ballot boxes to make sure that they're empty before they tape them up. Like, everything's been tried in other countries, so they know how to cover for it. And you can watch the voting coming and going all day. You can be there when they open the boxes and when the people lay out the ballots and actually count them. And you can be there writing down those numbers when they call them into the central office. So it's fully publicly viewed. it's a crazy world. I'm not saying it's impossible to skew an election, but it's very, very hard in our system. Again, like so many other things, it puts the responsibility on us, though. If you've got the time and you want to get involved in that, sign yourself up as a scrutineer with a third-party advertiser, and you can go in and be a part of that process to watch. Because I don't think there'll be funny business, but the only way to assure that is to make sure that we're watching, and then they know they won't even try.
I do want to clarify something about my last comment about changing WCB from provincial to federal or whatever. Once Albertans decide that Alberta wants to be independent, it wouldn't be as if those things just immediately change. Those things go on. Nothing changes until we collectively decide how they're going to be changed. And as Cory mentioned, that comes through Constitutional Convention, deciding what kind of government we're going to have, what our foundational laws look like, those types of things. Then we hold a general election, we elect people who advocate for certain things, and we vote for the people who we're more aligned with or whatever. And then we start the process of changing those things. So it's not like there's a switch that's flipped and the table is flipped and everything changes. No. Things continue to run. The government still does the things government does, for better or for worse. And then we gradually legislate, because that's how changes are made, through legislation. We legislate the changes over time to what Albertans want for Albertans by Albertans.
My name's Wayne. I've got one question, but I just want to say that Elections Alberta, I understand, said today that you'll be able to get a mail-in ballot now, and you don't need a reason to be able to get it. My question to you, and there's lots of flack about that on Facebook. My question to you is, what does Forever Canadian mean to you?
What does Forever Canadian mean to me? It means that I'll always be a Canadian. Period. It's a blessing. I don't agree with all the laws. I don't agree with the direction the country's going, but I feel incredibly blessed to be a Canadian, to be able to share my opinion, even if my opinion is so big as to advocate for seceding from the Federation. Like, this is what it means to be Canadian, is that we have choices, and our voices matter, and we're allowed to express ourselves politically or otherwise. I don't believe that Canada as a whole is continuing in that direction, but right now we can. So when I see a Forever Canadian sign, I don't get upset. I might even put one on my lawn, because it means a lot to me that I live in a country that allows me to be so open about my opinions, even to leave the country. That's a big deal, and not a lot of people have that. So that's what it means to me.
Chris may be a bigger man than me, because I don't quite see it as I agree with what he's saying. I love that, and I wish I had that opinion, but that's not the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear Forever Canada. Is I hear Forever Ottawa. I hear forever all the stuff that hurts when I think about it. The pushing, the thumbs, the hand down, the top, big government. I hear you don't really matter, and I guess that's why I'm a little fed up with it. But I wish your thought was my default, but I have to confess it isn't quite. May I grow up to be as wild and good as you.
Oh boy. You know, I actually, thanks, Ben. It's very dramatic. I mean, as an entertainer. I actually share that sentiment, and I post on Facebook continuously things like, what does it mean forever subjugated? Forever status quo, forever in debt, forever all of these things. There's forever a lot of things. But I'm making a conscious choice and a conscious decision to hijack that saying for my own purposes, for a positive message, right? But it is really fun to replace that word with other ones, because there's a lot of examples we can use.
It is. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tricia from Calgary. So we're talking about Alberta separating. What about the idea of Wexit instead, or in addition to? Because I know that sometimes our neighboring provinces are saying, they want to split from Ottawa too. So do we each split, become our own nation, or can we become a unified West nation, Wexit?
That could be. They're going to have to do what they want. That to the same degree that someone from Saskatchewan or from BC can't come into Alberta and say this is what you should do. We got good ideas, but I think honestly that the whole world is watching what's going on here. The whole nation is watching, and we seem to be the ones who are willing to put up with the crap to do it. And if it does happen, it wouldn't surprise me at all that this guy, that guy, however many other provinces will say, you know what, we want to do the same thing. There are other, BC and Saskatchewan are both having talks about this at this point. Quebec has always talked about this. And if after we leave, and if the next province wants to try the same thing, then there's always negotiations we can have of working together, just like any other country. That's my opinion.
I'll just hit quickly on a couple of things. Yeah, the mechanism is there. It has to be province by province, so they have to make their own choice. And if they become independent, I think if one becomes independent, a couple others are going to follow very quickly. And we could negotiate different agreements as neighbors and probably be very close. I think Saskatchewan's our closest sibling. I just got to digress a little on things to think of in the longer game. As Chris likes to remind me, I'm much, much, much older than him. And back when I was 29, I started the Alberta Independence Party, which was back in 1999. And I had the opportunity to speak a lot with Ted Byfield at that time. I was on his radio show, and he wrote up in Alberta Report a couple of times about us. And he had a concept he called refederation, which was sort of like tearing things down and then rebuilding under a new deal. So if a province can get out, that kind of changes the deal, it breaks the deal, it ends the deal. The world is our oyster. We can renegotiate new relationships with the other provinces and possibly have some sort of, I don't want to go as far as say federation, but a very close relationship, but under much newer terms, our terms going into it. And I think the easiest negotiations would be with Saskatchewan, of course, maybe the Yukon, and certainly interior British Columbia. But the world will be our oyster. But the first thing we have to do is get our own province out. We kind of have to stay narrowly focused on that and then look broader later on.
There was actually a push to do that in the early 80s, and I didn't know about this until maybe a couple years ago. There was a fellow by the name of Elmer Knutson. Does that ring a bell for anyone? So Elmer Knutson was the leader of a party called WestFed, and his message was, hey, Confederation isn't actually done, and the West should confederate together because we're more aligned than the East is. We can each confederate and work together and be happy with whatever. And that was in late 70s, I guess, and up to the 1982 repatriation of the Constitution. But you can go online and go on YouTube and search for Elmer Knutson Webster, the journalist guy, Irish guy, 1981, I believe, and you'll find a very interesting video. Webster first interviews Bill McClelland, who was the Minister of Energy in British Columbia in 1981, and then he interviewed Elmer Knutson. And the things they're talking about, if you change that to like a high definition video and change the close a little bit, it would be almost like it's people talking today. The same issues that they were talking about as Western Canadians back then that were had an uprising of Western alienation and independent sentiment are happening now. Well, that was, how many years ago was that? 40? Well, I'm just about 47, so that was like 45 years ago. For 45 years, the West has been having the same conversations about our position within Confederation. The same problems, the same inequities, the same everything. And nobody has done anything really to fix it, specifically the federal government. So what we're doing here in Alberta, the things we're talking about are very important. And they're relevant, they were relevant 45 years ago, they're relevant today, and they're going to be relevant in 20 years if we fail to act today.
Hi, may the Schwartz be with you. These guys will kind of know what I mean by that. My question, well, it's not really, it's looking for comments on, there are 9 other UCP referendum questions on the ballot. First thing is, how many people know what all 9 are? There are 9 referendum questions that the UCP has put on to this ballot that we're going to take on the 19th. And I'm wondering how many people are talking about it, because nobody seems to be talking about these 9 other questions. This 10th question is the one that obviously is very important to everyone. But if you go through all 9 of these questions, Danielle Smith, she's campaigning against the 10th question, but she's not campaigning these other 9 questions. And if you go through all 9 of these questions, every one of them, what is it they're going to do if you answer yes to all 9 of these questions, or even one of these 9 questions? And my comment to you guys is, if you answer yes to one of these questions, are you not saying yes to the 10th one for the reason that she can't fix those other 9 questions without answering the 10th question? And I'm just looking for your guys' comments on that particular comment.
So I think kind of what you're getting at, and the 9 questions are falling by the wayside. I mean, still all the way to the end, 90% of the discussion is going to be on question 10. But the futility of finding change through those other 9, because it is an exercise of wasting time, because most of them call for constitutional change, which we know is never going to happen, which does lead you to the conclusion you better vote for option 2 on question 10 anyways, because you're not getting anywhere with it. A few of them are talking about a few changes that we can make, though, like changing the amount of social services that non-citizens can collect in Alberta and a few things like that. But getting rid of the Senate and controlling our own immigration, can't do it without constitutional changes. So you might as well vote for option 2 in my view anyways. But
here's my problem with this. Our premier, a lot of respect for some of the things she's done, well, actually many things she's done, tells us that she wants to do all those things and she wants to fix the situation. She wants to create a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, right? That's the term she uses. And then doesn't do any of it. Not only doesn't do any of it, but gives a list of questions that she knows she can't do anything with, much like the equalization referendum, and then says she's going to campaign against the only solution to get those things done. This is why I say, like, we're being gaslit. We're being made to think that, oh, that last question, we can't support that. That's a horribly taboo. That's whatever. We should need to be United Canada. But let's focus on these other 9. Well, wait a minute. If you really want to do those other, or 5 of those other 9 things, it requires constitutional amendment. We can't do it. And they know it. And they're still telling you that they're going to campaign against option 2 on question 10. This is the problem I have with it, and why I've become more vocal about the gaslighting that's coming from our politicians around this conversation. And we're going to cut right through that at Let's Talk Alberta meetings.
My name is Arlene, and I have a comment and then a question. If you've never seen Canada, The Illusion on YouTube, be a good, lots of information on there that you'd find very interesting about Canada. My question to you is about banking. So I understand you can leave the country and still bank, but how do we not know that our accounts won't be frozen? Like, it's a bit of history.
That's a really good question, and I'll turn it right back at you. How do you know your account's not going to get frozen now? I mean, all you have to do is donate $50 to a trucker who needs lunch, and you can have your bank account frozen. Do you like living feeling like you might not want to speak out what you believe in because the government might freeze your bank account? I don't like that feeling. It doesn't stop me, but I don't like that feeling. I think something needs to change. Now, if I think that the government would do that, no, I don't. I think they got completely spanked last time they did that. They were made a fool of on the international stage. The United States called them out. Like it was not a good look for our government to do that. So our federal government to do that. So I don't think they would do it again. That not to say they couldn't. I suppose they could. Anything's possible, but it's I don't believe it would be a likely thing.
Well, there's a lot of no good looks for our government, so I can't imagine that they'd be concerned about that reputation. But I guess we'll never know.
I hope we don't see that. But honestly, there is a notion that the government will persecute people that are speaking out on behalf of Alberta sovereignty. I really don't care. You know, they can belittle me, they can threaten me, whatever they want. I'm not going to stop because of what they're doing. And I would encourage any person in Alberta or in Canada, for that matter, if you're concerned that the government may persecute or prosecute you for expressing your political desire, then you need to make some changes and you need to push harder.
Yeah, I just want to quickly add, our economies are very integrated. So if Alberta became independent, to just swoop in and try and steal the assets of Alberta bank holders at a position like that would practically cause a civil war. It would cause a bank run, not just in Alberta, but across the country. Banks would collapse. It would be a catastrophic move. It's one thing to cherry pick and violate so many rights like they did with the individuals who contributed to the truckers, but to go after a whole province would be unprecedented. As Chris said, I mean, that was where it even crossed the line with the rural community. There's a big level of kind of a trust between government and the citizens where at least you don't take their bank savings. And they crossed that in Canada, and it went poorly. So, again, we could never underestimate what this government could do, but I don't think there's a high risk they would come for the accounts at that point.
Hi, my name is Shauna. I'm from High River, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to spend this day with us to answer our questions. What we're watching right now is the treaties or lack of in BC right now, and watching how that is unfolding. And speaking with people in Alberta, we think that we're safe because we have the treaty rights here in Alberta as we speak. But the treaties were not signed when Alberta began. It was before Alberta actually became a province. And people believe that the treaties are only active on the reservations, but when you read into it, the treaties actually cover the entire 100% of our province. And so because they were signed before Alberta became a province, are we not tenants of the province because those treaties were signed before Alberta became the actual province, so that we share the rights of the land? We are also, I guess, under a treaty as well as the Indigenous people here. I guess we're all Indigenous people. But how does the Alberta government negotiate succession from Canada when these treaties were signed originally with the British Crown, handed to the Canadian Crown to do with what they want? They're saying that they're not being managed properly, and they want them to be renegotiated in the true form that they were before. But how can we separate when we all have equal rights in Alberta, it seems, to what I'm reading?
Well, treaty interpretation is quite a big world. If you read the treaty texts themselves, well, to start with, as you pointed out, they're transferable. They went from the Crown to the federal government, and management of Crown lands went to the provincial government. So those responsibilities tend to be carried over. They're still there, but they can change government to government. Now, the treaties were expressly clear on the land outside of reserves. They used every word possible, and they had translators, and they had dozens of chiefs, and they had dozens of officials permanently, forever seated. They didn't parse the language. They said you will give up all claims to that land forever in perpetuity. I know some people are saying, well, they didn't understand it at the time. I understand two judges rule on some pretty crazy stuff, but to try and reinterpret what was signed and what was communicated 150 years ago is absurd. And I don't underestimate some of the absurdity that comes from the courts, which makes me all the more frantic to become independent so we aren't slaves to those rotten rulings. But the coming in violation of the treaties, it only comes if we're saying that we would become independent and then we would dissolve the reserves or dissolve some of the obligations that came within those treaties. Outside of the reserve, from reading the treaties, at least not reading in, but reading the treaty text themselves, the only obligations are allowing unfettered hunting and fishing rights off the reserve. Outside of that, there's not many other obligations. There's providing education on the reserve, which led to residential schools. and some degree of payments for chiefs, even a number of whetstones, things like that are very out of date. It's going to be a complicated area. We can't be naive about it, but it is not a deal breaker for us, despite some people saying it is. So realistically, 98.7% of this province was very clearly ceded in those treaties, even if people are ready to try to renegotiate that deal. But I know Chris has more to add.
So this is the question that comes up often, and it's a very relevant question. It's an important question. I actually took the time, I've been digging into this quite a bit. Over the last few months, I've written a number of blogs on this topic. The first one was called Why Independence May Benefit First Nations People Most. I believe this is the greatest opportunity for all Albertans, not just non-First Nations Albertans. I wrote another one called, what was it called? Treaties were meant to free people. They weren't meant to cage people like they've become. And so I've been looking into this. And then more recently, I wrote a booklet, which you can find at the back there. It's called First Nations Treaties and Opportunities for All Albertans. And I would encourage you folks, I think I brought 50 of them with me, take one. But when you take one, remember, they cost like $4 to print, believe it or not. So if you could throw a couple bucks in the bucket, that would help us print more. All of my personal thoughts and opinions on this subject, based on the treaty text, Supreme Court rulings, and things like that, are all in that booklet. And what I'm an advocate for is this is an opportunity for First Nations people to renegotiate outdated treaties that aren't serving them well. The notion that because it's treaty land that democracy can no longer prevail is preposterous. And it actually, it undermines the intent, the spirit that the treaties were written in. The treaties, the spirit of the treaties, and every treaty is in that book. Every person who signed on both sides of the negotiating table is in that book. You can look up Treaty 6, see where it was signed, when it was signed, by who, what the intention was, all those things. It's all in there. It was purposed so that we could move into the future together. That's the whole intention. And over the years, things went wrong. And in my opinion, from what I see, is the biggest thing that went wrong was the government used a specific group of people to have an outcome that they desired. And it continues to this day. So please grab one of those booklets. I didn't have a saddle stapler, so they'll fall apart if you drop it. But all of my thoughts on that subject are there. And if you disagree with something I've written or I've got it wrong, please let me know, because this is a conversation that's going to be ongoing right until one way or another with Alberta independence.
So the chiefs have gone and spoken to the king, because that was originally when the treaties were signed, and they are looking for validation from the British Crown above the Canada law. And so the federal government could use that against us in order to secede. And the king, if he were to weigh in, which they said he has washed his hands of any politics or law in Canada, but if push came to shove, because that was signed in that country, they could prevent us from separating, because they would side with the G7 country to keep us together because of the treaty rights in Canada, if I'm not mistaken.
I think the king won't touch it with a 10-foot pole, to be honest. And he was very polite with them when they came over to say, I appreciate your concerns and I'll look into it, and moved on. Actually, it was one of the things with the repatriation of the Constitution in '82. The monarchy really is just a figurative thing now. I understand we got the Governor General. I understand we have the trappings of it. But there really is no real authority left within the king's hands any longer. If he dared to try to mess around with a Commonwealth country directly like that and break the trust between the Parliament there, that would really truly bring about the end of any significance of the monarchy, I think, for a lot of people. I understand that there's some notions that some indigenous people feel that it carried over and it bypassed the new changes in constitutions and government formations later on, but realistically, they are just a symbolic family now.
And if that wasn't the case, then when Quebec put a for sale sign on the lieutenant governor's lawn and said, we reject the monarchy. If you want a lieutenant governor, you pay for it. And when they sent a courier, not an envoy, not a politician, just a regular courier with an envelope to hand to the king when he came here saying, we reject the monarchy, we want nothing to do with it, there would have been something happened. But nothing happened. So this is something that I believe Alberta should do as well, just as Quebec did. There are a couple comments that are aligned with kind of your questions. Andy says, I'm sure they appreciate your opinion, but they also want people to respect their nation's internal processes. Yes, 100%. I respect the First Nations internal processes as the treaty describes. I also expect them to respect the nation of Canada's internal processes as the treaty describes. So that's kind of my view on it, is where we are individual nations and each nation should respect the other's choices.
Hi, my name is Ethan, and I'm not sure how to phrase the question, but I would like to draw attention to something that has happened recently, which is Bill C-9, because we haven't addressed that yet. And like to say that Ottawa is on a dark path might be a bit of an understatement, but it's very true. And the way I see Bill C-9 as like a tooth in their whip that they are forming, their whip of tyranny. So I'm not sure what my question is. I guess my question would be, would the Republic of Alberta be massive on protecting our rights and freedoms, like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of travel, freedom of assembly, freedom of protests, and other actual human rights that we have always enjoyed here in Canada and are being eroded?
What you got to look is that's up to you and me. What they're talking about is trotting out these gentlemen that Chris was talking about that are working on these white papers, and they are searching other constitutions around the globe and picking out what's good out of this one, and let's pull something good out of here. They're putting together what they believe would be the Constitution. They are going to trot that out for you and I to take a look at and put our input into it. So if that's something that you and I want, we'll show up and we'll say yes. But it will be up to us. That's one of the things we don't know yet.
And that's the opportunity, right? Yeah. Is for the first time in history, we get to decide. And I want to point out, because you mentioned C9, one of the reasons why the government is able to fine or potentially jail people for what they say is because in no place in our Constitution or Charter do we have freedom of speech. Right. We do not have that. It's not a right in Canada. And freedom of speech, I believe, is paramount in any democratic society, because if you can't speak, if you're silenced or forced to speak newspeak, how can you effectively convey your political opinions and change the world? You can't, and I kind of think that's what the point of C9 is.
Hello, my name is Zeni, and I live in Okotoks. I'm an immigrant in here, and I swear allegiance to the king or to the monarch 2 times, when I became British and when I became Canadian, and I was so confused by how many times am I going to swear allegiance to a monarch, a foreign power. When you are swearing to a foreign power, it means you don't have any sovereignty. You don't have any freedom. And so when this month came, and we are going to be, I'm so excited about becoming a Republic of Alberta, because when we became republic, we will elect our own president, and all our votes will matter. You know, when we elect our own president, we will have our own constitution, and in that constitution, you know, there is a process of impeachment when the leader is corrupt. It's not like now. You can't do anything even if they sell the whole Canada to anybody, to foreign power. So I was so excited that this is going to be due, because just for the sake of my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, not for me anymore. We will be able to elect our own Senate, not appointed by some, I don't know. And we will be able to elect our own Congress and run our Congress. And in the Constitution, we will have a proper Constitution. Right now, we don't have one. And I discovered this in 1976 when I came to Canada, that we don't have any Constitution. Canada is not really a sovereign country because you're swearing allegiance to Queen Elizabeth. In all the buildings in here in Canada, you can see the pictures of Queen Elizabeth as the foreign power of this country, and it's not right to me. When it comes to impeachment and also independent, I came from the Philippines, okay? Our country became, we have our own, became free after 300 years. We have several, we fought the king of Spain since Isabella and Ferdinand. I tell you, since Isabella and Ferdinand, we're fighting them. Anyway, not me, because I'm already have a little bit of Spanish in my blood. Okay. Anyway, please correct me if I'm wrong. So we really don't have any constitution, don't we? We don't.
Well, there is a lot of there's a lot of speculation around that, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to what can be enforced. So there are people out there that say the Constitution's not valid because of this, the Constitution's not valid because of that. Some say it's not valid because Quebec never signed it. Well, the Supreme Court, which is the supreme interpreters of our law, ruled that it didn't matter and that the Constitution's valid, so there's that. But at the end of the day, it's about what can be enforced. What I will speak to is that Canada has never had a constitution that we wrote. Never. Our Constitution came from the British North America Act. It was an act of British Parliament passed in England and then imposed, on Canada. We didn't decide. That's why there's things missing that you would expect to be in a constitution if the people wrote it. So here's what I'd say. Regardless of whether or not our current constitution is legitimate, it's less relevant because we still have enforcement around that. So there's that. But the opportunity for Alberta to be the first people in this land to draft their own constitution by the people, for the people, swearing allegiance to the Constitution to uphold those laws, that's a big deal. That's not a foreign entity that's imposing rules on the people. That's the people deciding they're going to self-determine and be accountable to themselves instead of a sovereign on other land. So right back down to that word opportunity again.
There is a new book written on Constitution, and it's a BNA Act, which is the British North American Act. The British North American Act is being they did it in the Parliament in England, giving us a privilege to use their constitution, whatever. And then we are given the right to do a little bit of pieces of, they call it statutes. And, we don't have, it's not really a real constitution. We have the latest book. It was only, released not very long ago. And it's in the library right now, and I read it. Because you don't have any constitution at all. As constitution, like, for example, India, they only gained their independence in the 60s. They asked the parliament, Britain, the monarch, to relinquish them of their hold on India. And so is Jamaica, Barbados. These countries are, they're all, they are all colonies. And I couldn't understand why Canada, the parliament, the people, the prime minister, and all his gang did not go to Britain and said, could you please relinquish us? We want to be independent.
So what's your question?
Well,
that's
now,
it.
now,
Why
now,
don't they
now
do
we have
that?
an opportunity. Now we have an opportunity to do that, and I'm excited to seize that opportunity.
Try it again. My name is Vicky, and I'm up here, I'm compelled to be up here because of the answers that you gave to the young man who asked about Bill C-9. We're very glad that you're all doing what you're doing. We're benefiting from all of your work. My worry is Bill C-9 is just one of a series of bills that the federal government has pushed through at breakneck speed without discussion, without review, without committee. And I am very concerned that they are going to use these bills to silence people like you, people like me, people like all of us here. And so what I'm asking you to do, and you don't need to answer me tonight, but make a plan, have a plan for when they try to silence you, because they will. They're not going to let go of their cash cow without a hard fight. Bill C-9 is, I'm satisfied, part of that fight. And so I'm just asking you to please take that young gentleman's question more seriously, put some thought into it, and prepare for it. And I don't need your answer. That's my comment. Thank you.
So the last question for tonight.
My name's Valerie. I'm from High River. And it ties in with Bill C-9 as well, but I'm also considering that Carney is part of the WEF, and Justin Trudeau's comments that we will own nothing and be happy, and Carney's close relations with communist China, and the fact that we have Chinese police stations on Canadian soil. I'm just wondering that if this referendum goes through and Alberta should separate, has any consideration been given to military defense of Alberta?
Yes. Oh, do you want me to elaborate? So this is just my personal opinion. I believe that day one, with an independent Alberta, we should be negotiating with the United States to provide our defense while we build our military. Why? Because we both have the same interest in continental security. They have the equipment, the people, the know-how, all of those things. We have some oil. We could trade and negotiate for that, and we could have a defense force up almost immediately. There's two sovereign nations on the planet. I can't remember which ones they are. They use the United States military as their primary defense, and there's 28 others that use the United States military as supplemental defense. So it's a natural relationship to do that. But I believe in sovereignty, so Alberta should be building and working towards a robust, fully funded, honorable Alberta military to provide our defense after that. But yes, these things absolutely are being considered, and thank goodness they're being considered by people that are much more intelligent than me. And I think Jasper said that was the last question. Is there another one that's super pressing?
This gentleman has more statement about financial stuff.
Okay, maybe we'll talk about that one after, if you don't mind. We won't leave, so you're welcome to come and chat with us in the back. I do want to address one thing here. Somebody commented online. Let me just bring it here again. Andy says, my question is for Christopher Scott. Chris, your July 19th open letter to the Grand Chiefs and Chiefs responding to the AFN resolution was published publicly on Facebook rather than sent privately to treaty leadership. What was its primary purpose? To begin dialogue with treaty leadership, to influence public opinion, to signal your movement's position? ? Have you received a direct response from any treaty nation or AFN representative since publishing it? No, I haven't. The reason why I published an open letter is because I was responding to an open letter. It was an open letter from AFN that was published on social media, so I responded to the open letter as part of the open letter chain. I'm hoping that people reach out. I would love to have the conversation. And I do want to point out that this whole idea that First Nations people reject the idea of Alberta sovereignty is wrong. There was a recent poll done in which 46% of First Nations respondents said that they favored changing Alberta's relationship within Confederation. 46%. That's almost 50% higher than what the last poll suggested that Alberta as a whole did. So like I said before, Alberta independence, in my opinion, has the potential to benefit First Nations people the most. And they know that too. So I would love to talk to leadership about that. It seems like it's difficult to get those conversations happening. Most of the time they just reject the invitation, but I sure hope that that's not the case going forward, because we're all Albertans, we're brothers and sisters, and really we should be talking about these things regardless of our ancestry, because we all need to move to the same place together, and that is a free, prosperous, and strong future for Alberta and Albertans. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for your visit. Enjoy your evening. Everything has been recorded on freedomcalendar.net. If you have the effort, go to letstalkalberta.com for more information. We've got triflets in the outside. Thank you and enjoy your evening.
And tomorrow we'll be in Nanton, by the way. So if you want to follow us up, that would be good.